Today I'd like to talk about Nikon's huge announcement back on the 23rd of August this year, announcing the new Z Mount and the cameras and lenses to go with that. Yes, Nikon has finally made an announcement that they're going over seriously to the mirrorless system with the Z Mount, or Z Mount if you insist. And I have to say that shortly after that announcement, I made the decision. Yes, I'm moving over to mirrorless. I have sold my Nikon DSLRs and most of the lenses, and I've now invested in not the Nikon Z system, but the Fujifilm X system. Okay, so this video is just really for me to explain why I've done that, what I feel the advantages are of changing systems. Right, okay, let's get straight into this then. So firstly, why didn't I want the Nikon Z system or Z system? Well, firstly, the Nikon company have insisted that it's the Nikon Z system, not the Nikon Z system. In other words, they're forcing the whole world to speak American English. Well, sod that. I'm British and I'm not going to hang anything around my neck called a Z anything. No, but seriously, that's not the reason at all. Seriously, there are a number of reasons which I'm going to go into in this video. Right, so why change? What's wrong with Nikon DSLRs? Well, nothing really. They work really well. They handle fast. They've got superb handling, excellent image quality. A lot of the APS-C sensor Nikons, especially the D7200, provide excellent value for money and are capable of fantastic results. I'm not changing to Fujifilm because it's mirrorless. Okay. I'm switching over to that system, because I think the Nikon F mount will start to become a legacy system, and I don't want to remain invested in a legacy system. And B, I like the Fuji X system a lot. Okay. The focus of Nikon's research and development, inevitably following the introduction of the Z mount, will result in all the effort in R&D is going to be on the Z system, not the F mount. It's going to have to be. There are issues with the new cameras they've announced. They're several years behind Fuji and Sony. So they're going to have to invest a lot of time and money in improving the performance of those cameras and introducing a full range of lenses to go with them. Because of that, they're simply not going to put the effort into the DSLRs anymore. Nikon have announced that they're still going to support the F-mount system. Well, of course they are. Of course they will. Existing Nikon users are not going to switch overnight. Indeed, for many of them at the moment, there isn't a really strong reason for them to switch to the Z system. I'm not going to the Nikon Z system, so why not? What's wrong with it? Why don't I like the Nikon Z system? A few reasons. At launch, the cameras are years behind Fujifilm and Sony. They're lacking features, they're lacking performance. Autofocus tracking is not up to standard that you expect from a modern camera, especially considering the price. They don't have eye detect autofocus. In fact, I don't even think they have face detect autofocus. The Z system has been launched with 3 lenses, which I have to say look very disappointing indeed. Not only do they look cheap, but according to reviews I've read, they feel cheap. They're very plasticky. They have f1.8 apertures on the 2 primes and an f4 on the zoom. They seem to have the specifications of budget lenses, but the prices are anything but budget. I mean, they're asking £600 for 50mm f1.8 that has a very plasticky build. I mean, come on, Nikon, are you really serious? Your existing f-mount AFS 1.8 f1.8 50mm is well under £200. Are you really expecting to pay more than 3 times as much for the Z version? I mean, come on. And where is the really fast glass? They've made a big thing about this Z mount being very large. I think it's got a diameter of something like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's about 55mm. And they've made a big thing in their promotional adverts about the light gathering capability of that mount system. So why on earth, Nikon, launch it with such mediocre lenses at the start? I know they have published a roadmap, a lens roadmap. We can see what new lenses they're going to be bringing out over the next couple of years. There are going to be some better lenses coming out, but I mean, it's hardly inspiring. And looking at the cost of these mediocre lenses they've launched with, when the better lenses do come out, then they're just going to be very expensive. Another thing as well, there's been absolutely no mention or rumours or anything about APS-C. It looks like this new mirrorless system is full frame and full frame only. There has been some speculation by some that because of the very large diameter of the mount, there may be a medium format version coming out in the future. If that's true, I think that would be good. But what about APS-C? Yeah, and the cost as well. I mentioned the lenses are overpriced. The camera body is overpriced, both the Z7 and the Z6, bearing in mind the performance on offer. Okay, so I've talked about why I'm not going over to the Z system, Nikon Z system. But why Fuji? Why not Sony? Well, I'll get on to Sony in a moment. Firstly, Fuji. I've had a Fujifilm mirrorless camera for a while now. I just sort of dipped my toe into the Fuji water in December 2016. I bought an XE2S just before it got discontinued. I knew it was going to be discontinued. It's the old 16 megapixel sensor, but I bought it because it was at a good price and I just wanted to try out the system. I like the XE2S quite a lot. It's a great camera. The kit zoom, the better kit zoom, which is the one I've got, the 18 to 55 f2.8 to f4, is an excellent lens, and it's better than anything comparable from Nikon anywhere near the price. The camera has great image quality. It's a lovely little camera. It's something I've been carrying around when I wanted to travel light. It's a great camera, but I never felt it was good enough overall to replace my D7200. Okay. Another reason why I'm moving to the Fujifilm X system is it's already a mature system. The cameras are already well developed. They've already reached a very high level of performance with them. They have a great load of lenses, and the lenses are superb. One of the main reasons for going to Fujifilm is the lenses. Fuji hardly make any mediocre lens. Maybe I've heard the 18mm is a bit mediocre, but I have no personal experience of that lens. I like the way the cameras are styled. I like the way they're made. Fuji is a company that seems to listen to its customers and give them what they want. That's not something Nikon and Canon always seem to do. Another great thing or great feature of the Fuji system is they're very generous, as you may have heard elsewhere, with firmware updates. They don't just release new firmware to fix bugs, which would never have been there in the first place. They also release new firmware on a free download basis, to give improved functionality and improved performance. One of the best examples I can think of there is with the X Pro 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when that camera was first launched, it did not have 4K video. And then sometime afterwards, a firmware update came, and they added 4K video to a camera that previously didn't have it. This sort of thing is just unknown with Nikon and Canon, and I believe Sony as well. Another good thing about Fuji is the ease of adapting other brand lenses. I'm keeping a few of my Nikon lenses, which I will be using as manual focus lenses on the Fuji bodies. And finally, one of the main reasons why I'm going for Fuji, I'm an APS-C shooter, and Fuji are serious about APS-C. Nikon and Canon see it as a budget option. You know, they persuade people to buy them, but they hope and they will upgrade to full frame in due course. They don't really have a full range of high quality, dedicated APS-C lenses for their cameras. They tend to be the cheaper lenses. They always, if you're an APS-C user with Canon or Nikon, you always felt to feel that you're a second class. It's not really professional enough. But that is just their marketing. There's no reason why APS-C size sensors shouldn't be a fully featured, high quality professional system. And that is the route that Fuji have been taking. They are serious about APS-C, they're ambitious about APS-C, and they do not see it as being an inferior option. I like the APS-C because I think it's basically the sweet spot. In terms of image quality, technically, slightly less dynamic range, not quite as good image quality as so-called full frame, but in real world shooting, the differences are minimal. Plus, you've got the advantages of mostly lower cost and lighter weight. You know, with the Fujifilm system, all the lenses are designed for the smaller sensor, for the APS-C sensor. With an APS-C sized Nikon sensor, a lot of the time you will be having to choose full frame lenses because there isn't a suitable APS-C version available, so that you're carrying more weight around than you need to, and in many cases spending more than you need to. Okay, so that's why I like Fuji. I think the Fuji system's great. I've just bought an X-T2. I bought that the day before the X-T3 was announced. I knew the X-T3 was coming out. I knew what improvements it was going to have, but I got a really good price on the X-T2. And in terms of the... So why not the Sony system? As you'll be aware, they make some rather good APS-C censored mirrorless cameras, and also full frame. The full frame gear seems to be particularly well regarded by some people. So why did I feel it wasn't for me? Well, firstly, the ergonomics. You can tell Sony doesn't really have a background as a camera manufacturer traditionally. The ergonomics, the menus, the controls, etc., just nowhere near as good as Nikon or Canon or Fujifilm. Secondly, the lenses are much less appealing to me. A lot of the Sony lenses are quite mediocre. I feel they do make some very good G Master lenses, but they're quite expensive. The third and final reason why I'm not interested in Sony is the reputation for customer service, which I've heard a few reports from various sources saying it's not really what it should be, really. So the system generally just doesn't have the appeal to me that the Fujifilm system does. Although in many respects, some of the Sony cameras are superb. I just didn't feel overall, taking everything into account, they had as much appeal to me as the Fujifilm system. Why not full frame? That seems to be where everyone's moving. Yeah, I mean, because of marketing mostly by Nikon and Canon, people have been made to believe that if you're really serious and or you're professional, you have to move to full frame. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that's just marketing. The image quality benefit of moving to full frame from APS-C is marginal and largely academic. It is true that image quality is slightly better on full frame. Dynamic range is better. But that is marginal in the real world. It's not a huge difference. It's very, very small. Plus, you've got the increased weight and usually higher cost of the full frame system. I think weight is important, particularly if you're going hiking out into the mountains, doing some landscape photography. For me, it's much more appealing to have a lightweight system to carry around than a heavy one. Another system I should mention that I briefly considered but decided it wasn't for me either is Micro Four Thirds. Some of the Micro Four Thirds cameras are really nice, those made by Olympus and Panasonic. There's some really nice cameras. A lot of them look to be really good value for money. And some of them, especially the Panasonics, are really strong on video performance. However, I felt it wasn't for me because I'm primarily a still shooter, and the sensor size is getting a bit too small. I think the difference in image quality between Micro Four Thirds and full frame is a lot more noticeable than between APS-C and full frame. As I've said previously, I feel that APS-C is the sweet spot, and I think with Micro Four Thirds it's just getting a bit too small. You got to draw the line somewhere, and that's where I'm drawing it. I think, you know, APS-C is the sweet spot for me. If I was more into videography rather than still shooting, then Micro Four Thirds would be a more appealing option. But I'm not. I'm primarily a still shooter. I don't shoot a lot of video, so yeah, that wasn't for me. So I mentioned previously that I got an XE2S a couple of years ago just to try out the Fuji system. When I decided to move fully into the Fuji system and sell my Nikon DSLRs, the camera I've gone for is the X-T2. I actually bought that just the day before the X-T3 was announced. I knew the X-T3 was coming. I knew what advantages it would have over the X-T2 and what improvements it would have. But I decided the X-T2 was perfectly good enough for the type of shooting I do, and I managed to get that at a very favourable price, which made it a bit of a no-brainer, really. The new X-T3 is fabulous, but for me, the X-T2 is fine. The improvements of the X-T3 are mainly to do with video and continuous autofocusing subject tracking. They're supposed to be significantly improved in the new camera, but I find that they're already good enough on the X-T2 for my needs. So that's why I went X-T2, not X-T3. I may get an X-T3 in the future, or I may get an X-T4 when it comes out. We shall see. But for now, I'm totally and utterly happy with my X-T2. I think it's a fantastic camera. and love it to bits. Before I end this video, I'd just like to go back to the Nikon Z7. There's a number of people reported that the subject tracking is poor. I think Jared Polin, the Fro guy with the big hair, did a video on this, a video on that. It looked very unimpressive to me. Other people have complained about it as well. I was looking at the manual for the Z7, and on page 57 of the manuals, in the basic settings section, they have a note on subject tracking. I'll read to you word to word what it says in the manual. I'm quoting directly here. The camera may be unable to track subjects if they move quickly, leave the frame or are obscured by other objects, change visibly in size, colour or brightness, or are too small, too large, too bright, too dark, or similar in colour or brightness to the background. Well, that says it all to me. Nikon, that tells me you've released a camera to the market before it was really good enough. I think that's inexcusable in a camera costing more than £3,000, whether it's purposed as a sports action camera or not. That is basically not good enough for a £3,000 plus camera. Yeah, I'm sure in time the Nikon Z cameras will get good enough. At the moment they're not. The lenses are unappealing, and yeah, I see no reason to switch. Nikon have tried to market the Z7 as a mirrorless alternative to a D850, which to me is just laughable. The D850 is an awesome camera. The Z7 may have the same sensor, and it may well be able to produce some really nice images, but what modern camera can't these days. Its performances fall short in several areas. Really, Nikon would have been better to wait until they had a more competitive system before launching it to the market. And by what I've seen of the new Canon EOS-R system, that is far from perfect as well. I'd just like to end this video here. I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. See you again next time. Bye.